Hi, I'm Ruth Freeman, founder of Peace at Home Parenting Solutions, and I'm delighted to introduce you to author, researcher, and Peace at Home educator, Amy Alomore. Amy is our inspiring education specialist here at Peace at Home with a special focus on educating educators and translating that knowledge to help parents support school success. Peace at Home parents love Amy's unique blend of down-to-earth guidance, humor, and insight while helping us all to remember what's really important. So let's get started. And remember, we're here to answer your questions.
Hi, welcome to Talking to Your Teen About Sex and Sexuality. We're going to talk about your child as a sexual being, how to talk to them about sex and sexuality, and supporting them through these conversations and their development. When we think about our kids, we really want to think about the big picture, right? We're raising independent adults that can navigate the world on their own, always with our support and love, but navigating it by making their own decisions. So we have to offer them opportunities to make decisions, big and little, and support them through that decision-making process. Kids are very eager to be independent, especially tweens and teens, and they're still dependent on us. So we have an interesting balance we have to strike with that. And kids are built for play and discovery. They are risk takers, and we are built to keep them safe. And we want to think through all those decisions a lot more than kids do. So it's all about that conversation and helping them learn how to strike that balance with us and allowing us there to help them through it. It's really interesting to think about how kids think about their own knowledge, and they're very curious, and they apply a lot of what they think they're learning to what they think they already know. And so we really want to make sure that they're grounded in their foundation of what they know, and how do they use that prior knowledge toward their decision making. Now, humans are sexual beings. So even as young children, our kids are sexual beings, and that can be a really difficult thing for parents to recognize and for parents to accept. And so we really want to think about who our kids are as people and not really label them into different facets of who they are. So we're going to have these opportunities for them to have age-appropriate decision-making, really understanding that their sexuality is part of being human. And so some of the decisions they make will be about that. We know that education helps them with this decision-making, and that shame impedes the relationships. So as much as we can keep these open conversations, the better. Now, we talked a little bit about who our kid is as they're developing into their own adult. And so we really want them to learn, like, what is their character? Who are they? And we want our child to understand that who they are is way more important than what they do or what they produce. So we want to encourage their independence or their agency. We want to allow them those opportunities to make decisions, and understanding that their decisions are separate sometimes from what we would wish them to be. We're focusing on who they are and not their social standing or their relationship or how they define themselves, but who they are in the world and how they act and how they are with other people. And we want them to understand that, we share that common information no matter what their gender or sexual orientation is. And so we are with them in this conversation. We honor who they are, and that this information that we're sharing with them is important for all kids to understand as they develop and grow. We know that talking about sex and sexuality helps to support your own relationship with your child. It helps them to identify misconceptions, which, believe me, they are hearing and making. It helps to make them more likely to talk with you, with others, with their sexual partners, future or current. And it helps them to increase the chances of delaying age of their first sexual relationship. So it supports in all of these areas. And we know that talking about sex and sexuality does not make our kids more likely to have sex. And sometimes that can be a fear. And so we want to maybe just delay that conversation a little bit more to protect what we would consider their innocence. And yet it's really opening up the conversation for them to learn about who they are, more about themselves. So here's some information for you to consider as we continue to think about these conversations with our kids. 15 to 24-year-olds account for half of the new STDs each year, and those are sexually transmitted diseases. And so if we know this to be true, the more education we can provide about keeping them safe when they are having sex is really great. The average age that teens start to have sex is 17. That has stayed steady for quite some time now. And so we know that this is a pretty solid number we can count on. It doesn't mean that your kid will have had sex by 17, and it doesn't mean that they will wait till they are 17. But what it means is that this is the average age we're seeing it happen. And so these conversations should start with young children and continue consistently through their adolescence. More than half of teens in the United States have had sex, and teen girls who do not use contraception during their first time are twice as likely to become teen mothers. And so, what this tells us is that education, again, is crucial here, because if we can help our kids protect themselves, they will be safer. And 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys is sexually abused by the age of 18. Something to keep in mind, so that when we're having these conversations, abuse is different from their own personal sex drive, but we want them to understand how they are seen by others and how they can be manipulated by others and how they treat others. And so that's part of the conversation. When we talk about the conversation, or maybe you call it the talk, it's not just one talk. This should be something that is continuing throughout your relationship. You influence your child's decisions. You play a huge role in the decisions they make, sexual and otherwise. You want to avoid assumptions like that they're already having sex, or they're not going to have sex, or they have somebody they're intimate with. And you want to just ask questions and avoid overreacting, because when we judge harshly or overreact, it can stifle conversation. You want to offer resources to supplement the conversation. So if there are books that you have been using, articles that you are citing, resources like counselors at the school or doctors that you want to offer them, make sure they have contact information. And even though they don't need your permission per se to go talk to somebody else, it's nice when you say, hey, I really trust this person, and I think it would be great if you had a conversation with them, because you're really encouraging them to seek help and to find support. You want to find those teachable moments. So when there's a television show you're watching and somebody makes a decision, you want to talk about the decision that they made. If your child sees something that you feel is too mature for them to see online, rather than just hide it, talk about it. Why would you prefer they hadn't seen that? Sometimes we worry that our children are going to find porn, or that it will find them, but we can talk about it. Why were you looking at it? What made you curious? If they turned it off right away, what made you worried about it, right? And just have the conversation with them so that they understand that what they're doing, inherently being curious, isn't the worst thing in the world, but that the most important thing is that they understand their decisions and that they're thinking through them and able to share with you. You want to be approachable. And sometimes being approachable means helping your child figure out who the other people in their life are that they can talk to. So while we really want to think, wow, my kid could come and talk to me about anything, and you may be that person and they may be that comfortable, but there's always that moment where they might prefer to go to somebody else. And so helping them to identify who those go-to people are can be really great. And focus on the benefits of the knowledge, right? So focus on the fact that you can help to keep your child safe by having these conversations and educating them, rather than on the negative consequences, like if you have sex, you're likely to get an STD, right? If we focus on how do we keep safe when we're having sex, it can be a lot more positive and supportive. When we talk about the body, we want to expect respect, right? So we're teaching our children that they should expect respect for their bodies and show respect for others. You want to be really direct with them. Don't use slang words, use true vocabulary so that they learn respect for their own bodies. And you want to model and support body positivity. And this can be really hard for some of us. And so we want to just talk about it and have our kids help us catch our own mistakes in that area so that we can teach real self-compassion and ask open-ended questions. Make anything okay and let the conversation flow from there. When we talk about the emotions involved, we want to offer unconditional love. No matter who you are, no matter the decisions you make, I will always love you and I will always support you. It doesn't mean you'll never get angry. It doesn't mean you'll never be confused or overwhelmed. It means you'll always love them, and they need to know that so that they can come to you and talk to you and ask you questions, especially when they're in trouble. You want to acknowledge that there are real feelings in relationships. Sometimes when our children are in intimate relationships at a young age, tweens and teens, We might write it off and think, well, it's just a short relationship. It won't go anywhere. But we want to acknowledge that these feelings are real. And so when there is a breakup or when there is a fight or when there is true love and intimacy, this is real and it overtakes a lot of their world. So you want to ask them about their worries and talk about some common questions. So questions about, who they're hanging out with flow to what do they see in that person? How do they know when they can trust somebody? How do they offer consent? Really getting into some of these common questions that we face and introduce and practice consent. And so it looks like, may I have a French fry off of your plate? May I borrow your pencil? May I go into your room when you're at school during the day, right? So we're showing respect for consent and we're teaching our children to demand consent and be willing to say, I don't know, or I'm assuming. So when we talk about sort of those common questions, if you don't even know what those are, be willing to ask your kid, like, what are some of the questions that you have about sex and sexuality so that we can talk about it and I can help to support you. And then always be willing to look for the answers with them and provide them in return to that conversation. When we think about the peers in media, I want to just stress that peers are a wonderful, wonderful asset for teens and tweens. We really lean on our peers at that age and stage. We want to model our behavior after them, and we really depend on them. Being part of the pack is part of being a teen. And so it's really great when they have that connection with friends, and especially if they have a special group that they hang out with. These people can be wonderful teachers for our children. They also can provide some misleading information. And that's why it's important to really talk to our kids and educate them. We don't want to discourage them from talking to their friends and getting information from them, but we want to help to clarify any myths that have been spread. And, filters are fine in terms of, using the internet filters that you may want to use, but actually conversations are way better. So, if you use a filter, great. And know that your child could get online somewhere else through someone else's device. And they likely are. Even if they're not doing it to be, sort of sneaky, they might just be doing it out of convenience. And so we really want them to know that conversations are important. What are you finding out online? What are your peers telling you? How can I help you, kind of resolve your confusion here? And respect and honor their social development. Like, it's okay to have these questions. We encourage these questions. The more you talk about it, the more normalized it gets in your home. And it's okay also to say, I know this is really awkward, but it's so important that I'm having this conversation with you anyway. And that will help to make it more normalized as well. We want to check in with our kids regularly. These conversations are part of that checking in. And when we do that, it sometimes looks like just checking in, verbally. Sometimes it's going on social media with them. But rather than just monitoring and watching and sneaking around and kind of with the idea of catching them in the act, we're actually literally checking in. Can you share some of your accounts with me? Show me some of your posts. Show me some of your direct messages or your texting. And if they say no, we want to respect that privacy, but get a sense of like, what are the kinds of things you're hiding or keeping private rather than hiding, actually? What are the kinds of things you're keeping private? Are you keeping the confidence of a friend? Is there anything I need to be concerned about, even in hypothetical terms? Just so they know that you're there to help them. You're not there to catch and punish. You're there to support them and discover with them. Now, intimacy can look really different at different stages of relationships and different ages. And so we really want our kids to think about what is love and what is trust. How do we recognize love? How do we recognize trust? And you can talk about it in your own relationship because you are their first intimate relationship. And so when they understand that, they learn that like intimacy is way more than sexual encounters. Intimacy is about supporting one another, trusting one another. It can involve romance. And often in, our vernacular language, we talk about intimacy as romantic, but it's not always romantic. We want to model intimacy. We want to touch our children. We want to look them in the eye. We want to cuddle with them. We want to support them. It looks like support. It looks like them being able to come to you and talk about anything like we talked about before, making that safe space for them to come and talk to you. That's what support looks like. You want to talk about that trust. What does trust look like? How do you know you can trust somebody? When has somebody broken your trust? What does that do? And, letting them hurt can be one of the most painful things a parent has to do. But sometimes they have to get through a sticky mess to know that they can get through a sticky mess. And so we help them by being a soundboard for them, letting them vent, teaching them some of our coping strategies. But we can't shelter them from all pain. And so we help them walk through the pain and learn that they can eventually resolve and feel better. When we talk about health and safety, we really want to recognize the fact that our kids have an emotional investment in their own relationships, and we are emotionally invested. And so these conversations can be big and heavy. They can make us uncomfortable. They can make our kids uncomfortable. And when we step outside of our comfort zone and teach them that this is so important that I'm having this conversation with you, that signals to them just how crucial it is you have it. And it teaches them how to step out of their comfort zone. So the more you talk about this, the better it will be and the more comfortable and normalized it will be. When we talk about setting our kids up for success, we're setting them up for success in their own decision making. And so we know that if kids are going to have sex, that safe sex is the way they should engage, right? Because this will protect them from STDs and from pregnancy. And it allows them to participate in an activity that they're choosing, hopefully consensually, to participate in, and in a smart way. Now, if you as a family believe that abstinence is the only option, that is great. And you should definitely encourage your children, but you also have to set them up for success with that. It's very hard to fight natural urges. And so you need to talk to them about, how do you say no? How do you stay abstinent? Why is this important to you? And you need to share your family values. So either way, just set them up for success so that they can be healthy and safe. The last thing we want is to stifle our kids' sexuality in a way that they don't feel comfortable, and then they end up giving into physical temptation in an unsafe way. We want to allow for human behavior. Kids will make mistakes. Again, they're built to take risks, and they will make mistakes doing that. And so we want to judge them sparingly, meaning instead of things like, what were you thinking? Right? We go back to that. What were you thinking? Talk to me about this, right? We really want them to understand that their decision is what led to this consequence, and we can learn from it no matter how difficult or tricky it may be. We're glad you came to us, that you're coming and talking to us about this. This is so important. And we're going to relinquish a little bit of control and let you help out with the resolution, right? We're here for you. We've got your back. We respect your independence. We want you to learn from that mistake. And it is so important to remember that your kid likely had good intentions. So they didn't go and do something just to make you mad. They likely didn't go and do it, to make themselves upset or to get stuck in a situation. They likely tried something risky because that's what kids are built to do. And it's also a wonderful, trait for teens and tweens, that they will try new things and that they will learn from them. And they didn't do it to make you angry. They probably snuck or lied, if they did, because they didn't want you to be upset. So if we assume good intentions, it really helps us to enter these conversations in a way that can be more productive than if we're just angry with them. A few words about listening when we're having these conversations is just to remember that listening isn't waiting for your turn to talk. Listening is actually hearing what is being said and processing it and responding to that. And so we just want to sit back and listen to what our kids are saying. Even if they're silent for a moment, we want them to really develop a two-way conversation with them. So here are some takeaways for you. You want to make sure that you start the conversation about sex and sexuality at a young age and keep it going consistently through the tween and teen years. You want to focus on the benefits of knowledge, the education, the safety, and the health, and not on the negative consequences. Avoid assuming you know everything and overreacting about decisions that have been made. Offer other resources than yourself to supplement the conversations and encourage your child to go to others. And that's part of being approachable and identifying the others that you're comfortable that your child will go to. And let those people know that you've identified them with your child so that they are prepared for those conversations. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very grateful to have you at Peace at Home Parenting. Remember, you've got handouts, and if you've got a question or need more support, you can sign up for a live class, attend our monthly Q&A, join our private monitored Facebook group, or even consider one-on-one private parenting coaching. You can always email us at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com. Take care.